You're listening to My Inner Teacher with Peter Starius and Crystal Ariel. The answers you seek are within you.
Okay.
Hi, Edward and Laurie. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us. And we have begun this podcast to highlight people in this community of inner teachers that have moved into a field or practice where they're listening to some inner wisdom, inner guide. And what is valuable in this platform is for you guys to showcase exactly the process you're going through. And in particular with movement, Ed, this question is probably for you. This idea of body sensations being a source of intuitive understanding. How did that come to you?
Well, I think it's kind of an acknowledged scientific idea that our body provides substrata of sensations that get delivered to the brain. So you have your senses give electrochemical signals that are delivered to various parts of the brain, and you assemble some kind of meaning from that. First of all, perhaps a feeling of some kind, and then aspect of greater significance. So you're standing on a slippery piece of ice, and your body has or your mind interprets the slipperiness, and it takes on a certain tone of posture, which, okay, I'm apprehensive, I have to be careful here, and because it's taken that particular kind of tonicity, certain things can be expressed, or certain things will tend to be interpreted like I must move slowly and carefully because this is dangerous. And it means with that tonicity, other things would be very difficult to express, like joy and elation, because the way in which the body has formed this substrata of meaning based on what the senses have delivered creates a certain inner kind of being. How's that?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
When-
I think the important thing that comes out of that is that the inner being then performs an interrogation of some kind on what is this information and what am I supposed to do with this? Do I behave in an apprehensive fashion, or do I subvert this information because I have another more abstract concept that is perhaps being done? So in because I do this yoga theater thing, you might be going on stage apprehensive because your parents are in the audience and there's 800 people out there and I've got some very difficult moves there. But if I allow myself to go down that route, it's not going to be beneficial to what I'm trying to portray, which is, the handsome young prince who's strutting across the stage, or whatever the actual thing is that I'm portraying. At the same time, the thrill, the fact that there is something risky going on here where failure is possible, also serves to heighten the intensity of what's going on, and provides a certain fuel that makes the risk you take more worthwhile if something is accomplished.
yeah,
I think, if you don't mind me jumping in here, Peter.
yeah,
Please,
I
Laurie.
think that the idea, the whole, I was thinking a lot about what what intuition was to begin with, what actually is it? Um, and, getting older is a great way to look back at these things. So to me, intuition is, the sum total of my experiences in my body. That's what it is. And so as I've gotten older, I've felt more attuned to what those exact feelings are, what those messages are that I'm getting from my body. But I do think that it is the sum total of my experience, and that sense of what we know and what we hear and how to interpret signals from our body, I think, changes over time, and hopefully we get better at it as we become more embodied.
yeah. Do you find that there's any confusion sometimes when the sum total of experiences is contradicting? And I say this because of this idea of intuition being an inner voice, whether the voice is coming from an internal source or if it's being dropped in from the external. There are a lot of different thoughts about how that works. How does it work for you? Like, have you looked at it?
It's an interesting question. I don't know that intuition, I mean, I've had intuitions that were correct and intuitions that weren't,
Right.
so I don't know that intuition is so easily pinned down for me. I think it is a sense that you have that something's right or wrong, or that something's going to happen or it isn't. But I mean, at least for me, my intuition, unfortunately, has not always been correct. So does that mean that, though, it came from, I don't know, a place of, something that I was wrong thinking, or a place of misinterpretation or fear? I'm not sure.
Right.
I think that sometimes I think something, and I'm just mistaken. The sense that my body got was in that case wrong. In order to, I mean, that's why this was very interesting to me. This idea of there being an inner teacher seems to hearken to the idea that I have maybe, if at least if it's coming from inside, maybe not, that I have a foundational self, like we think about in yoga. And lately I've been questioning that. I think that who I am as a person evolves and changes, and I don't think any of those things are false. And I know if I look back at I'm in my late 60s. If I look back at my life now and think about who I was before, I'm not the same person.
That's right.
I'm altered, and so I'm not certain about that foundational self anymore. And it's one of the things that Ed and I interrogate all the time when we write. Like, who is this person? I can't even pin down me from yesterday to today, and I don't know that that's inauthentic.
It's a mystery.
Hmm.
And that to me in my own journey is being comfortable with mystery, and then accepting that intuition isn't 100%. And the idea that intuition is facilitated by void. In all the research I've done about intuition, it's one of the prerequisites of a clear signal from the intuitive part of your mind is emptiness, is space. And you guys talk about space in a movement sense. And I'm wondering, is that term space, which is an element in yogic subtle body anatomy, does space have a significance for you as a writer, as a creative writer, or as a creative dancer, or just in your everyday life?
Well, Kant's categorical imperative says we need time and space to have experience. And so I think I agree with that. But I think, too, there's the aspect of versatility that, while we might have an intuition that doesn't play out well, it is still ourselves that made that. Whatever we did, it wasn't something alien that existed inside us this is something that we created. And the way in which we live our lives would be a more creative experience, perhaps, if we recognized that we are forever involved in creating a simulacrum of reality in our heads that bears some resemblance to what reality is, and we invent some kind of response to it. So we have this delightful position of we create a reality, we are the audience of that reality, and we are the creation itself, and that this is meant to be a delight. So even if it goes wrong or is mysterious, as you're suggesting, it's actually it's a nice thing. This is it's all of us are involved in a huge artistic project, which is reality, and we delight in it if we can. And I mean, I would say the idea should be that we see beauty as something that is just latent in reality, and we have the capacity to experience it as the creation, as the audience, and as the creator.
I want to ask you guys about trauma because you've read that book, The Body Keeps the Score, I'm sure, right? So we know that we hold a lot of trauma, a lot of experiences, like you were saying, Laurie, like your intuition is the sum of all your experiences, and all those experiences live within your tissues, live within the fascia of the body. So how do you differentiate between the different feelings, that the feelings of anxiety versus fear versus power versus like your gut telling you, yeah, go do this. And then at the same time, like feeling really nervous, especially being on stage. How do you navigate the fluctuations of all those feelings? And how do you tune into that feeling that is the inner wisdom?
You don't know me, but you're talking to someone who's like, I'm a really emotional person. I'm like one of those like wear it on my sleeve people.
Please don't make her cry,
So yeah,
Crystal. No,
so I mean, it's a really good question for me, because I've had a lot of practice with it. I have come to believe that I used to hate that about myself. I used to really not like how I was emotionally driven, and that I have had a number of trying experiences in my life, and I do tend to put things in my body like that, and I'm aware of it. But I've just sort of come to believe that that's a good thing, and I don't try to parse it. I just accept it, and I'm not really. I mean, in frankly, I'm not really interested in getting rid of my trauma, identifying my trauma. That kind of focus on myself, I find, for me, not productive. What I'm interested in doing is experiencing everything as fully as I can, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, and trying not to make judgments about good or bad emotions. And so that's my way. I just feel it, and it's fine. I don't try to designate it as a bad feeling or one that's going to put me in the wrong direction. And I find that if I do that, I tend to see more clearly.
I think it's funny because we talked about Laurie is also a bit of an adrenaline junkie. Terrible. It's shocking. I mean, the things she will do for thrills. If we could only talk about that, but that's another program.
Why can't we talk about that?
But I mean, this idea that you
would be up for it.
I mean, Laurie sorry, you should talk about your terrible adrenaline situation, because it's relevant in terms of how much fear and risk and anxiety can be turned into a positive experience rather than something that just needs to be avoided.
Yeah, I do a lot of crazy things. I love doing dangerous, I guess some people would call them dangerous. To me, they're just challenging things. I don't know, rappelling down waterfalls and jumping off of things. And I'm always traveling by myself for months on end on a bike or something like that. And everyone always says to me, "You're so brave. I can't believe you do these things." I feel the opposite. I'm not brave at all. It wouldn't have the effect it has on me if I wasn't afraid. So, and that effect is positive, so there's something about risk and experience that to me is a very positive thing. And so I try again, and fear for me sometimes is my best experiences come out of fear and sometimes sadness, sometimes tragedy, because of the intensity of them, and I think there's not enough maybe emphasis placed on how intensity of experience is such a great teacher.
Sure. This idea of, fear, I have a similar relationship with fear, and I struggle. It's not easy for me. It sounds like it's easy for you. You've done it enough that another fear opportunity. and I'm not like that. Like
easy.
Every time it's like I get that same butterfly feeling. But this counterintuitive narrative, like I want to explore that a little bit. Like sometimes I read somewhere about this idea of intelligence, counterintuitive intelligence. Yet, even though it's counterintuitive, you follow your thought, and it turns out to be something magnificent, even though it was counter to intuition. Tell me about that, Laurie. I'm curious how that process works for you.
It's that in contemporary yoga, there's become this great emphasis on only having positive emotions, and so-called negative emotions are not encouraged in class or in workshops necessarily. Maybe it's more, and I mean, those are terribly difficult situations to control as a teacher, but they are actually great educators. And in making yoga more popular, we've sort of diminished many of the possibilities for intensity of experience. And so the learning possibilities that come from taking people to extreme places is being diminished. And so if you feel challenged, hey, just go down into pose of the child. If you're tired, don't push it too hard. But I think if you talk to, I don't know, most people of a certain level of accomplishment, they will speak with great respect about the training experiences when their teacher really put them through it. This had significance that many contemporary teachers in a 1 hour, 45-minute class, they're not prepared or they don't have the capacity to address some of the more challenging things, which are the things that bring about intensity, possibly ecstasy, but also this feeling of a creation of significance. A significant thing happened because I put myself through it. There was genuine sacrifice went on.
Mm.
So now, Laurie, you've had plenty of time to
Yeah,
think. Fix your microphone.
I want to follow up what you were saying, because I've just actually had this experience in a class. I've recently closed all my studios and started teaching for one of my students at her new studio. And I got a real lesson in what it's like now to be and I've been teaching since COVID. I've been teaching basically my same 30 students in a very different way, in a more intense way. And I haven't really been advertising, just sort of keeping my group and teaching them. So I haven't really been out there in the world. And I was shocked about, I got a list of things, like language things that I shouldn't say. I got a list, that everyone has to have a yes card. I can't just ask if people want physical adjustments. They have to have a yes card. And if someone, make sure, you don't make someone do this or that. And there was essentially the whole emphasis is on making sure that no one gets offended in any way, physically, mentally, whatever. And I was so struck by this. I wasn't like, okay, if that's what you want me to do, I'm fine with it. I just was, after what Ed said, I'm just, it's so much about that risk aversion. It's amazing anybody can have anything, even approaching some sort of ecstatic experience in class when there's no reason to have that. Okay, so doesn't the inner teacher come out when we get in those situations when we need them, when there's that risk, there's that danger? And I'm not saying that we should offend people or put them in danger. I'm just saying there doesn't seem to be a desire to challenge people in any way for fear of offending them. And I think that's doing, there would be no reason that they would ever discover that inner voice or anything like that, because they've never been challenged to have to answer any difficult question in their experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so in terms of a counterintuitive, counterintuitive, I'm still thinking about that, but I don't know that I've ever acted on something counterintuitively. Maybe I just don't think that much about things sometimes. I think maybe what's counterintuitive about me is that I can be very impulsive isn't the right word, but it's bordering on it. I do like to be spontaneous about things, and so I try not to think too much about that. So maybe that is counterintuitive, right? To spontaneity maybe is counterintuitive.
There's a time and place for everything, but you made me think that Diamonds are created under intense pressure, not soft caressing.
Yeah. And it is true, isn't it? I mean, whenever I talk about my favorite teachers are always the ones I didn't like the most, usually. Like I know I've worked for people, I've assisted for people who were just not very nice human beings, and I learned so much from them because they just looked you in the face and went, I'm not playing here, I'm not being nice. And and I listened because they were smart. That's what I cared about, not the coddling, and I just think that's just a change in our culture right now. Not just in yoga. I think it's a cultural shift.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
It is a new world that I'm still teaching yoga, and it's a new world though in the environment that I teach in. And I have adapted to a degree, but I don't ask permission. You know, I make it known that adjustments are part of what I do when I teach. And if you have any kind of limitations that you want me to know about, let me know before or after class. But I am also learned after 45 years or so of teaching that I have deep respect for bodies that I can witness. And so I don't just apply one size fits all adjustments on people. I feel this idea of counterintuition is part of the unknown, part of the mystery, this idea of thought before thinking, where something comes from a source who knows where. And I've had these own experiences so many times. They're real. They're as real as gravity to me. Gravity being this invisible force, this kind of unknown intelligence coming from some force. Is it internal? I don't know. Is it external? Maybe. It just depends on the individual path of the individual. So
The big molten iron core at the center of the earth.
it could be. It could be. Yeah. I want to ask a little more about your book. Like, who did you write your book for?
Rutledge.
Well, the last book that we wrote it's really for anybody. We have it on the jacket because we think anyone who's ever taken a yoga class and felt like there was more, they might be missing something. So it's for people that are really interested in the practice and its potential, its real potential beyond health and fitness and everything else that it's pretty much marked for nowadays.
What's the real
what
potential?
Are some of the...
Yeah.
Go ahead. Crystal, go ahead. Ask that.
What's the real potential? What is it, if not health and fitness and all that stuff?
Well, first, there are a ton of things it can be for, but certainly there are more, higher aims to it. I mean, it used to be about self-realization or actualization and understanding the nature of reality and our place in it and our, what is the self and what is reality. So the idea...
And how do they mingle?
And so this idea that it's solely utilitarian, I think, is
not untrue.
Limiting.
Absolutely true. But
Mm-hmm.
there is a higher, not higher. There are other dimensions to it, but particularly this idea of an evolution of understanding of the nature of reality, the nature of self, and what the levels of intensity are as a part of this. And to see reality, one of the things that we suggest and why we use a lot of art, metaphor, or analysis in the book is that yoga has the potential to clearly delineate why reality or the universe is the biggest, best art project ever. And we're all taking part in it all the time, but unconsciously. And yet there is the potential to go, wait, how do I actually make this better? What do I find of my inner self, and what do I meld with that which seems to be other? And at what point does that melding then suggest things that the two are one? And so I think these sort of I don't know, maybe other cultures or other times would have seen it in terms of God or love, or I'm construing it here as beauty. That there's, and I said it earlier, maybe beauty is latent in all things, And yoga is a technology like art to apprehend this idea that there is beauty. And we get it when we see a sunset, or we're looking over a range of mountains and we hear a beautiful piece of music, and we go deeply into the experience. And we don't have to reflect on it because the experience is beauty. And if yoga was potential, was being really looked at, it would be about experiencing beauty. And again, just I said it earlier, and it sounds like a really good soundbite, that we are the creator, we're the creation, and we're the audience of this all at the same time.
I think the point is too, like, it's not just in a sunset, as Ed said. We should be able to have that experience. What they traditionally call it bliss. We'll call it appreciation of beauty, or, we should be able to have that all the time, right? So, that's one potential that yoga has, is to have us understand that, reality is beautiful, and that we can have that experience of appreciation.
And that the way in which we apprehend this information is through the body. So that when we're talking about embodiment, it's when the totality of our being is involved in this sensual experience, and not in an analytic state of thinking about it, but we're in flow, which is, we're stealing from Csikszentmihalyi there, but and probably all the people who talk about flow in their practice, but I don't think it's really being stressed, or the importance of what the river of time is like, or what Heraclitus would have said about the nature of reality being a river that you can't step into twice. It's this constant flowing experiential thing, and yoga should be about heightening experience and developing discrimination of consciousness, so that we become connoisseurs of consciousness through our bodies, that we see our bodies as consciousness.
Yeah, it sounds like what
There's
you're
another
saying
good
is...
meme. Hold on, let me write that one down.
It sounds like what you're saying is kind of like the opposite of trauma, right? Because trauma is something that you're present in the moment for, and it gets stored in your body. But you're saying trauma in the best way, which is beauty that you are fully experiencing, and it gets stored in the body.
Because the trauma is undeniable, because it is part of reality, and reality is what nature dictates. There's only one. So if beauty is latent in all things, the trauma becomes part of a way to access the nature of beauty, that it's not something to be avoided or dwelt upon. Instead, it's a way to access something that is more delightful.
It's
In
almost as if
theory.
you can't. It's this polarity thing. It seems like trauma and this way you describe this bliss, this beauty, this deepness. It would be hard for the two of those things to not coexist. They're almost codependent on each other.
Certainly, the idea of melancholy, something that is sweet and sad at the same time, it's been something that has, I don't know, the yearning for God that other cultures maybe had. This yearning, this longing for something that is sweet, sad, and ultimately unattainable, has the two sides of trauma and beauty, or bliss and trauma, that something can be sweet and sad at the same time, and act as a motivator towards the apprehension of an understanding of oneself and reality.
I think it's important. Yeah,
Right. I when I heard that back, I felt like doing that too. Yeah. We can cut that.
Were you laughing at what Crystal just did?
Yes,
I had to
did.
cough. I had to cough.
I was going to spit myself, and the self and reality stuff.
You should see her off screen.
Oh, Peter.
I think, you know, of course we can't know what sad is unless we know what happy is, right? But the other part, so there is that too, you know, there is always one thing needs the other in order to define itself. This is the nature of meaning, right? In all things, right? But either it's a degree or it's an opposition, right? It can be on a spectrum, but certainly we need those contrasts. But you know, I think the important thing here is that, you know, emotions don't know good or bad. They just happen, right? So, I mean, feelings don't know good or bad. They just happen. And a good example of this is like, you know, when you start crying, okay, I'll speak for myself, and you don't know why. You know, it's just like, oh, I'm watching a cat food commercial on television, you know, and I just start crying.
Those
And
kittens are so
or
cute.
I could be somewhere and be people like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. I'm just happy. Or you know, feelings they're not that precise, are they? Right? Our body, but it is embodied. It is a body thing, I think, is really what Ed and I truly believe. And you know, this book and the last one, but this one in particular, this is sort of like 20 odd years of conversations that we've had, you know, over a cocktail or something like that. It's just yoga stuff we always talk about, like after we do a training together or whatever, or what problem we're having with students or something that we read in someone else's book. And so it's really like our musings about lots of different things that intersect with yoga philosophy and yoga practice. But one of the things that runs through all of it is that the body is the thing. You know, we've spent so many decades in Western thought saying, you know, the mind is the thing and making excuses for why we do body things. But that's just wrong. And the science says it's wrong, right? All of embodiment theory now says your body makes your mind. It makes the mind. It is more important. Okay. So I am my body, you know, and like I said, the sum total of my experiences is Laurie. That's who I am in this body. Right. And I'm 5 feet tall and I weigh 100 pounds. And it's got to be different than that guy I sat next to on the plane the other day. You know, this big black guy who was like, you know, 6'4" and weighed 250. And I never saw the top of his head, and he probably only saw the top of mine. You know, that's just a very different experience living in a world in that body. And so you're going to end up being a different what I'm thinking, who I am, is my body. It is a result of that me in my body. So when your mom tells you when you're younger and someone makes fun of you, oh, you know, you're not what's here, you're what's up here or inside here, they're wrong. You know, they're lying to you.
You're
This.
calling my mother a liar?
Calling my own mother a liar. Yeah. But I mean, it's just, when will we just admit this? You know, that it's just the case. And it's so obvious. And so what we do in the chapters is really explore the ways that our body is the intelligence of our being, you know, and amongst other things.
Fantastic. And I want to also ask, so both of you, what is the future of modern yoga? Like in your crystal ball, what is the future of modern yoga?
Well, I would like to see the studio template changed considerably. I think there is the possibility with motion detectors and things like that attached to your wrists or your fingers or your shoulders, that you could be making music by attaching those, and so that
I like that.
if you were measuring the smoothness of movement, or you raise your arm like this, that changes the lights. You would be able to be in a room of people actually creating music, creating a real club based on your doing of the yoga. And I you know, this is, the technology exists, and you know, I don't know that it's going to happen, but I would see that as being an excellent way to measure things like evenness of movement, evenness of breath, and use it as both a training experience, but also like a very intense and exciting experience that you would go like, I'm not going there just for my health or to make, yeah, I'll feel healthier after doing it, but it's like the most fun thing I could be doing. I'm going to be doing choreography, making music, and doing a light show, and it's going to be super.
And imagine the movements harmonizing so that you start like
exactly,
staggering the movements.
Exactly. Look for that in the first book.
To the
Love
first book,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you what I hope would happen, and I can tell you what I think is happening will
Tell us.
happen. I will not be the same. I hope, I wish, what I see happening, let me start there, is that yoga is becoming more about community, belonging. It's more about that than it is about the practice and any of its goals, right? So to be part of something, to be with other like-minded people, to feel special in that acceptance by others. And I could philosophize as an anthropologist about why I think this is happening and all that, but that's boring. What I wish would happen instead is that people realize the potential of this practice for, as Ed said, for expression. It is literally a practice for freedom and liberation and the feeling of freedom and liberation. It's why I don't practice with a mat anymore. Students look at me and go, "Do you want a mat?" I'm like, "No, why would I want to stay in that little square?" No, I don't want to be in there. It's just one of the ways that we've started to limit ourselves. I'm on this Foucaultian object, which is going to police my movements, and everybody else is watching. So if I go step off of it or go on their mat, they're going to police me as well. That's maybe it's not really a minor example. It's a big example of yoga, but there's so many other things that people are just constraining themselves with, whether it be being married to a discipline in a way that is non-critical, that doesn't question, a particular orthodoxy, whether it is, oh, that's what my teacher said, that's why I did it that way. Instead of critically accepting things and testing them themselves and having their own mind, they're just parroting what everyone else has told them and believing it because it's what yogis do. Yogis are vegetarians or vegans now. Yogis are nice. Yogis never see anything wrong. I find that very disappointing. And I would hope that yogis would realize that this is actually a useful, it's not just a fun way to burn a ton of calories and hang out with people you like and drink herb tea. It is actually a powerful system if the techniques are taken seriously and we, understand how much potential we have as human beings in our bodies.
Oh, okay. So before we close, one last thing. We want to know what is this is a practical challenge for the listeners. Okay, so what is one simple movement or somatic practice they can do this week to tune into their body's guidance?
We were talking about this, and we were trying to come up with something that involved all 5 of the senses. I went first to, eat a peach. Okay, so you'd see the peach and you'd feel the fuzz, and not the fed, but the fuzz, and you'd bite it, and you could hear what that sounded like as you bit into it. So you'd try and get all 5 of the senses there. I smelled the peach as well right there, and just see if you could actually go, these are my 5 senses. What information are they delivering to me? So very simple, basic. And then we went, well, we maybe ought to do something that's on a mat or has something, or like Laurie, I too have eschewed the use of mat for years. So off the mat, but yeah. So
you guys are saying this in front of the Manduka founder.
I know.
But I used to use a Manduka. Does that make you feel better?
Brown ones,
It never gave me a free one, so when I didn't get free mats, I gave them up. Yeah. Yes. It would be doing something as simple as, bringing the hands together and trying to get 5 senses out of that, going through your normal sun salute and just going, can I hear the birds singing outside the studio? And, what are the sense of the breeze moving through my fingers, getting the touch going? What do I smell from that person next to me? But, trying to get just going, all right, this is not about making shapes. This is about a sensual experience of reality. so that my body is getting these things, and then letting your inner teacher interrogate this experience.
Yeah, I think it's what we're really talking about is an exercise in embodiment, right? The embodiment's a process, right? It's a process of coming into the whole of your being all at once, right? It's not intellectual, it's experiential, right? It's not it's sensual, right? So anything that you do, that you can do, or you do just on a daily basis that has you opening your senses, and then just if it's, say, eating something, right, as Ed was saying at first, or touching petting your cat, and then try to enlist the other senses in that. I know what I'm feeling here, but what am I hearing? And how about my other arm? What's happening in the surface of my skin on my other arm? Or I do a simple thing in class that I love, which is when we're in Shavasana, I might ask somebody, for example, you're lying down on your back here, just notice the conversation the back of your body is having with the floor. When you breathe, your back is having a conversation with everything underneath of you, and it changes while you're breathing, and it's eternally interesting. And then how about the front of your body? What kind of conversation is the front of your body having with the room? Everything else in the room. And I think it's those kinds of things that take us out of our minds, of our analytical, and I'm guilty, a college professor, right? I mean, that's what I do. Take me out of that and just put me solely into that experience of sensuality. And if any time that you can do that, it's a great exercise in embodiment.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here and sharing with us. This has been a real treat.
Well,
thank you for having us.
It's been the treat has been ours.
Oh,
Yeah.
lovely.
Thank you.
I
Yes.
just feel like after this conversation, your book is, I'm going to read it again. And really, because this connection of the two of you now, Laurie, this is the first time I'm meeting you. And from your writing with all your references and stuff, what you embody is so different than what I read. So I'm so pleased.
I'm curious to know why, but that's an after this program conversation, I guess.
Well, no, let's include it, because you've been meticulous with, and maybe it's Ed as well, but you've been.
I'll tell you who's the meticulous one.
Yeah, just meticulous references and meticulous, like, scholarly writing. And you don't look like a college professor to me. So that's it.
Like you're supposed to have one of those curvy pipes.
I know. I don't do the yoga teacher the right way, and I don't do the college professor the right way either.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So the pleasure is mine. So thank you.
Okay.
All right.
That's it for this episode. Be well and stay open to the teacher within. If you've enjoyed our time together, follow or subscribe and stay tuned for upcoming chats you don't want to miss.